Hello everyone, a very warm welcome to you. My name is Nick and welcome to Q&A for August 2018 part 2. Yes, because there were so many questions posed that we've had to break this up and it's probably going to now be in 3 parts. I don't think we'll need 4 parts unless some other sneaky questions come in that I need to answer, but it looks like it's going to be 3 parts. And we're going to looking all over them. I'm going to answer about 99% of them. Some of them I won't answer because, well, it's not really in keeping with the channel. But, you know, we try and be as relaxed as possible. So here we go again. Now, anyone that's posted questions at least get 1 answered by the end of part 2. And then part 3 we'll try and get up tomorrow as well. So let's start from the top. Another bunch of fantastic questions. The first one is from Bonehead888. Now, I don't know if that name's anything to do with Arnold Rimmer. It was called Bonehead from Red Dwarf. Let me know about that, Bonehead. But he asks, quite a long question this, I better take a deep breath. Now, with all the modern gaming consoles around these days, what would be your choice? His is an Xbox, and he likes the new Call of Duty game. Even though the graphics are superb, he still feels that modern games lack the gameplay of the old, such as Manic Miner and Chucky Egg, and then says, what are your thoughts on the subject? Well, I fully agree. And now, I've always been a PlayStation man. It was just my natural progression, my natural route. I went that way rather than the Xbox routes. That's all I've ever known after that. So I went ZX Spectrum, Commodore Amiga, and the Game Boy Advance was sort of like in there as well at some point on the crossover. And then it was PlayStation 1, and then all my friends had PlayStations, or most of them, and then I just went down that route naturally. It's progressive. When the PS2 come out, let's get that. When the PS3 come out, get that. PS4, well, you know, eventually. There's a bit of a gap then because finances weren't so great. But yes, I play mostly retro gaming. A little bit because they're more playable. Then you can pick it up and play for 10 minutes and drop it, where a PlayStation 4 game you can't tend to do that. But more importantly as well is because I go on so infrequently on the PlayStation 4, quite often when I turn it on and I got like a spare 20 minutes or half an hour, it will force me to download an update for either a game that's already downloaded or a system update, and that might take 10 minutes, quarter of an hour. So after that's done, I haven't got too much time left. So most of the time I turn on the PlayStation, it's just to update it. But the playability, I mean, the PlayStation and modern day games have a lot more depth to it. But yeah, my favourite era of gaming is the early 80s, where the basic 8-bit games. I think that's why I'm liking the Atari 2600 ones I'm reviewing more now. So yeah, in answer to your question, Bonehead, PlayStation 4, my choice for the modern day crop, because that's what I know. But yeah, in terms of what I'll do, go-to games, playability on the 8-bits and some of the 16-bit ones, yeah, more easy accessible. I wasn't aware of microtransactions, all that sort of stuff, so I prefer them, and the playability of them is better. So a good first question to kick us off then. Next up, Andrew Smith. He asks, hi Nick, that's a good start. Hello Andrew. What is your favourite Spectrum-related YouTube channel? I find the Spectrum show very interesting, personally, and do you read the Retro Gaming magazine? I have to be 100% honest here. The time it takes to run this channel, the amount of videos that go up, I haven't got too much time available. I do look at a few YouTube channels, not all their videos, I do look at a few. None of them are just Spectrum related on their own. They do a variety of things. Some of them don't do Spectrum at all. I look at all the big ones like IGN, GameSpot, because I like to get interested in all the new games that are coming out to get a breath of what's going on there, so I don't get disconnected too much. But Spectrum on their own, there's not an individual that I would actually go to. A lot in that genre, because it's tough to grow, are very, very small. Yeah, so I haven't really got an answer to that one, really. There's another question later on about my favourite YouTube channels, I think, which will sort of like do a bit of a crossover there. And also as well, I don't read the Retro Gaming magazine either. I don't know if a lot of people, I'm sure they've got their readership. I tend to get most of my information from YouTube, Google, and just general knowledge on the TV, things like that. And social media as well. I've never read the Retro Gaming magazine. I'd like to have the time to sit down and read a magazine, but at the moment I just don't have the time to fit it in, Andrew. So yeah, wish I had more time to do so, certainly would do. If they gave me a free subscription, is it a physical thing you get or is it a download? If they gave me a free subscription, I'd definitely have time to read it then and probably comment it on videos, but it's got to fit into the channel or in bother. Thank you for that one. Next, Hannibal asks, now he's got a bit obsessed with Igor the Thunderdwarf here. He's this character that occasionally comes in. People generally don't watch those videos as much as the other stuff because they just don't understand what's going on. He's just like a comedy sort of mystery character. He's a Thunderdwarf. But anyway, we'll zip through all these. Does Igor wear a hat? Yes, he does. 2. Do you ever trade hats? No, we don't, because his hats are miles too powerful for mere mortals to wear. If I put on an Igor the Thunder hat, my head will probably explode or I'll be teleported somewhere. Mere mortals like myself, I'd like to be an immortal at some point, but mere mortals such as myself, you can't handle that sort of power. You just can't handle it. And do you and Igor ever have... No, do you and Igor have the same hat size? No, we don't. He's a lot smaller than me and can move in between dimensions, which I can't do. You've got lots of other questions about Igor. He's a bit of an enigma character. He roams through time and space. Occasionally he bumps into me. Occasionally we talk about art. Occasionally we do a comedy video. Occasionally he talks about the Mr. Men. As you might see from the video last Wednesday, his interpretation of Mr. Muddle, which is a bit different from the original Mr. Muddle. It's a lot shorter as well and ridiculously silly. So if you haven't seen that, have a look at that. But in terms of hats, no, we don't trade anything, and Igor is a man of himself, completely and utterly. Thank you very much, Hannibal. Igor, everyone. Okay, next up, John Marsh. Couple of questions from John. Well, you asked more than a couple, I think, but we'll queue those other ones up for the part 3 to mix it up a bit. Number 1, what are your early opinions of the Commodore 64 and Atari? I think a couple of months ago, started reviewing Commodore 64 games, another 8-bit system. Up to that point, I'd only ever reviewed on purpose systems I actually owned that I had a knowledge of. So that was the ZX Spectrum, the Commodore Amiga, and Game Boy Advance. Over the years, people keep asking me over and over again, review other systems. I keep saying, no, I can't do that. I'd rather do what I'm doing. But then I've caved in at some point because... well, you know, and Commodore 64 has now been reviewed. It's good to have a comparison between what the ZX Spectrum could do and the Commodore 64, so it's good to compare those two 8-bit systems, and indeed the Atari 2600, which we've done in the last month. So I'm enjoying covering those ones. What I've been more impressed with, not knowing the Commodore 64 too much to begin with, is the SID chip. Its sound is excellent, what that can produce. So it's not as good as the Commodore Amiga, but it's a lot closer than I thought it was going to be beforehand. I love the colours, the way Commodore 64 adds colours to the system. I prefer the ZX Spectrum colour palette, although there was less colours that the Spectrum had, but it was a lot brighter. Commodore 64 is a bit duller, but it does handle colour better. It's never going to get any colour clash with that system, and the games I reviewed so far tend to be the better games before we're going into the unknowns, which is like in the ZX Spectrum where we are at the moment, occasionally hitting the odd gem. So to answer your question, my early opinions of Commodore 64, great computer, still prefer the ZX Spectrum of course, because that's normal. That's a system I had when I was growing up, and I got nostalgia for that. Commodore 64, I can only imagine what it would have felt like if I had it as a kid. But some great games there we've covered, and we'll continue doing those. The Atari 2600, that of course is a system from 1977. Our first computer I had was the ZX Spectrum 48K, which came out in 1982. So there's a 5-year gap, although the games I've been viewing have been the early 80s. It's an 8-bit system, but you can confused for thinking it was a 4-bit system, but there's no such thing as a 4-bit system. The graphics don't look as highly detailed as the Commodore 64 or the ZX Spectrum 48K, although they are both classified as 8-bit. I'm really loving the sounds in the Atari 2600, especially when it does the classic games. Its sound is much better than the Spectrum for those. Things like Space Invaders, Galaxian, Beam Rider, Enduro. It can really punch out a good sound, that one. So yeah, I'm really enjoying that as well. Didn't mention the Sega Mega Drive or Genesis, which we've only recently started covering about the last week or so. Again, we seem to be covering the better games, apart from Virtual Pinball. I didn't really like that. It's all about trying to bring in new audiences to subscribe to the channel and get involved and get more of a bigger umbrella for what retro is, a bigger understanding of it. So hopefully people are now joining in from other areas, chipping in. You don't have to watch all the videos, but if you like a particular system, it's good to that I'm actually covering that one. Don't plan to cover any other systems at the moment because that might over confuse it. BBC Micro. I tend to shy away from PC games a bit unless there's a ZX Spectrum connection or something like a remake. But yeah, I think we've got enough systems for the time being. So ZX Spectrum, Commodore Amiga, Game Boy Advance we've taken away for a bit because it doesn't scale up very well, and the occasional PlayStation game, which I had, and Commodore 64, Atari 2600, Sega Mega Drive Genesis, which I didn't have, but I can still add a bit of my knowledge to it. Okay, that's a bit of a long answer to that question. Next up, will there be any PS4 reviews? Oh, I'm glad you answered that, in the near future. Now, I've been meaning to do PlayStation 4 reviews for absolutely weeks. I wanted to crowbar them in because that's the most up-to-date system, and it's good to compare the most modern day stuff with historic stuff. Now, PlayStation 4 games cost quite a bit of money when you're on a tight budget, unless a producer sent you them for free, and then of course then you'd review them and keep going back and back. But PlayStation 4 games, because they're more deeper than ZX Spectrum and Commodore Amiga and all those sort of things, you can do more videos of the same game. So Grand Theft Auto 5, I'd love to jump back in there. A few of the racing games we covered, I'd love to jump back in there. The reason why I haven't done it is they take so long to do and to render as well. Quite often they might be like a 3 gig file, where the biggest files I'm encompassing at the moment is like 1 gig, which take a while to load up. ZX Spectrum could be anything from about, I don't know, even like 50 megabytes to 300 or whatever like that, and they're a lot quicker. So you think of like the rendering speed, the editing and all that sort of stuff, it just takes a big chunk of time when I'm trying to build up the channel. So yes, I'd really love to try and get in somehow some PS4 reviews. So thank you for asking that question, John. GTA 5 is probably the most obvious thing for you to try and have a look at. I've got to remember to keep straightening my back. I don't want to grow up with a crooked back. Right, need a better seat. Maybe when I'm rich and famous I'll get one of those red and black racing seats. What do you think? Or a massage seat? Yeah, well, maybe. Right, okay, right. Yes, hooray. Next up, I'm glad I wrote these down, I never would have remembered them. Andre Russell, do you have any thoughts, this is a brilliant question. Do you have any thoughts what will happen to the channel many years after we're all dead and gone? Assuming we don't blow up the world somehow, well that's possible with who's in charge at the moment. So say in 200 years time, would you be happy if the channel was still viewed as a historical thing, or maybe as a museum piece? Well, that'd be nice, my own sort of like corner. Or would you prefer it to be removed? Now, who knows what's going to happen with YouTube in the future? History says that something gets big for a certain amount of time, then another thing comes along and dwarfs it. A bit like social media, where there's Friends United, no one uses it anymore. MySpace was the go-to thing, then it got overtaken by Facebook, Twitter, and you know, all those sort of things as well. They've got Instagram, Flickr. I think everything seems to have its day. Now YouTube, I've got all the market for video. They're owned by Google, and some changes have happened, gradually making it harder and harder for the individual gamer. But say for example YouTube did stay, I reckon it might be replaced by something at some point, some virtual reality gaming device where you can actually step into the video. But for the time being, if YouTube was to survive for 200 years, I would like my channel to stay up. I'd like people to watch the videos. I'm not sure how many views it'll get each month, because it's something you have to keep going at, or else you drop away entirely. But yeah, I would love it. I would love the thing to stay up for future people to see in 200 years time. That'd be a wonderful thing, to compare the games they got then to the games they've got now. Probably you can store the whole of everything on YouTube on a little button in 200 years in the future, and zip to anything you possibly would do. Yeah, so the answer to that is yes, it's a bit of an odd thought, isn't it? People watching the video after you've died. If I've died, hello. What a weird concept there. But also as well at the moment, YouTube, every so often they'll do, I think over a few years or so, they'll do a big scan to accounts that aren't being used, to dormant accounts, and they'll get rid of them, just disappear. So that's why sometimes you see periodically people's subscriber accounts drop, sometimes really dramatically if they've done lots of sub for subbing or using external sites to get the get dead subs just to build their numbers up. Sometimes they'll drop more dramatically than others because the YouTube's looking at channels that aren't actually being used or signed into. Now I don't know what the rules are if a channel's got like I've got approaching 2,000 videos on it. They might keep that. I don't know. So I'd like them to. I'd like them to. And now an equally deep philosophical question from Andre. He asks, do you pronounce it yogurt or yogurt? Okay. When I was at school, everyone used to say yogurt. I never heard of yogurt until I got familiar with American television, where they called it yogurt. You say tomato, I say tomato. Let's call the whole thing off. I think I say yogurt, but who cares? You can say it either way you want. If you was at the supermarket and you said, can you show me where the yogurt is, they're still going to know what you're talking about. They won't direct you to cheese or the baked bean aisle or the dog food aisle. You think you're at the dog food aisle, I think, hang on a minute, this is not yogurt. Yogurt. Okay, next up. Mark Henson. Hi Mark. He asks, who would you most like to be from the comedy show or comedy sitcom, British comedy sitcom, Bottom? If you're not familiar with that sitcom, you'll probably live outside the UK. Maybe best Google it, but it's a madcap show, no longer on anymore, unfortunately. The 4 characters I got to choose from are Richie, played by Rick Mao, Eddie by Aid Edmondson, hello Richie, Spud Gun, I think it sounds a bit more like David Mitchell then, Spud Gun or Dave Hedgehog. They were their 2 crazy mates that occasionally come around sometime, but basically it was 2 guys, sad guys, that lived in a flat. Their hygiene wasn't the best. One of them was a terrible alcoholic, and the other one had huge mental problems, but it was Rick Mao, wasn't it? And he played it well. Their Brixton shows are actually still on YouTube if you want to watch those. They go on for a couple of hours. There's a few. Gilligan's Island, check out those. It's a brilliant show. But 4 characters to choose from who I'd like to be, and they're not a great choice really out of those. Out of all of them, I'd probably go with Eddie, only because he wears a brown hat quite a lot. I already own that. He wears a brown suit. I don't have a brown suit. But he seems to be quite happy a lot of the time. He doesn't pay any rent to Richie. And he seems to have a good time, although he's a very sad man. And he's drunk a lot of the time, so it doesn't even matter. So out of those 4, I go with Eddie. Richie's just a bit too crazy. I'll probably have an aneurysm being him. And he stresses all the time. Spud Gun. We don't know too much about Spud Gun, do we? He doesn't seem to have much going on upstairs or much going on at all. And Dave Hedgehog seems scared all the time. He was Mike out the Young Ones, if you're aware of that. As was Eddie, was Vivian at the Young Ones. And Richie was Richard at the Young Ones. Hope that helps you a little bit. So I'd go for Eddie. I'd go for Eddie out of that choice. Mixed questions. Thank you very much. Another question from Mark. He asks, which other YouTubers do you admire the most? Well, this is sort of like overlaps that question about is there any other Spectrum ones that you look at. The ones I admire the most, if you go onto my main YouTube channel, on the title page you'll see featured YouTubers, and I've added ones there which I tend to watch quite a lot. It's not all of the ones I watch, because I do watch quite a few, but there's Steve Benway, who gave me a shout out quite early on when the channel was running about 120 subscribers, and his shout out got me above 200 quite quickly, which was a huge thing back in the day, although that seems a really small number to have now, but it's all respective of where you are, and the channel's developed quite a lot since then. Really need that to happen again with someone that's absolutely huge now, who's got like 500 subs or 100,000 subs, but it's tough getting someone to do that if they don't know who you are. So yeah, so Steve Benway, Nostalgia Nerd, who's a patron to the site, I watch his stuff quite a lot. Boogie I watch. Now quite recently, you might not watch these, just to get a bit of an idea of the way YouTube's going, I do keep an eye on the yeah, I'll probably do another YouTube video about this, about the shock people videos. You spend ages and ages doing technical videos, and then it gets a certain amount of views, and you get someone shouting with a crazy hairstyle about the price of beans going up, and they get like 1 million views, and they're a millionaire and a big global star. So I do keep an eye on those ones. KSI, PewDiePie, Logan Paul, and a few others. I wouldn't say I admire those, but I do watch those channels. What I do admire is they could basically have nothing and create something so huge, huge following. I still don't quite understand it, but it's something I need to learn, I think. But Boogie's a good one. Very honest. He has a bit of a weight problem. Went through a divorce, broke his arm. There's always seems to be something going on with him. But his delivery on the camera is fantastic, and I try and take some cues from him when I do things like this. There we go. So that's the ones I most admire. Kingston LJ had some questions on the first Q&A. I split them up a bit, so we've got another question here. Another quite an awkward question again. Makes you scratch your head a little bit. If you had to be stuck in a lift or elevator, so you got to, there's no choice, we're shoving you in this elevator, you're stuck there with 3 famous people for 24 hours, who would you choose? Now, I get a little bit claustrophobic in small spaces, so I want 3 people that can take my mind off it, even in arguments or interact with each other, or there's character clashes there, so I can chip in every now and again with just the odd wind-up comment, and that'll keep my brain going and moving forward. Otherwise I'd just go insane. Now the 3 I've got here, which I think might be good, I've got, first of all, I've picked Professor Brian Cox. Now he, you're probably aware of him, but if you're not, he used to work at CERN. He's got a TV program every so often that gets involved with the sky at night. Stargazer, Infinite Monkey Cage is a radio show that he does as well. But he's basically a professor of astrology and physics, talks about black holes and everything to do with space and cosmology and that sort of thing. So he's quite a clever chap. Yes, so he's quite clever. So we've got that person. So obviously he explains things in details that people used to do in lectures, explain to people that know nothing. So bearing that in mind, I'd like also to have Carl Pilkington in there, who never understands anything, or can't grasp anything, or always comes at stuff from an odd angle, because I think he might annoy Professor Brian Cox to the absolute extreme, with actually his theories that aren't backed up by anything, and saying things that he's heard, which he probably heard wrong. And those 2 will be going at each other absolutely stupidly. And in the background as a gloss to all this, I'd probably put the giant comedian Greg Davies, giant in size, because he'd probably get pretty annoyed with both of them as well and get stressed out that he can't get out the lift. So they're my 3. You would have some people might have thought I would have chosen 3 beautiful women, but no, I've gone for Carl Pilkington, Professor Brian Cox, and Greg Davies as my 3 people stuck in the lift. Now that'll be a show. Us 4 stuck in a lift for an hour. I'd like to see that on the TV. 1 billion views. Right, next up. How are we doing for time? Let's just check. Okay, we're doing okay. We're still alright. So, next question is from Interghost. He's still got more questions from Interghost, which we'll cover in part 3, I think. Have you ever thought of a baseball cap or other headwear for future videos? Now, in all my videos, I do wear a hat. I've got a number of hats, but I do wear a hat quite often there at Tilbury. Because I wear a hat so often, people often say to me, "Are you going bald?" That happens quite a lot. Well, let's take the hat off here. So here we go. My hair's probably sticking up all over the place. I am not bald, although it's not the colour I'd like it to be. Maybe I could dye it. Could I wear a baseball cap? Well, I could do that. There we go. So that's fulfilled then. I can wear a baseball cap. But then he says, or other headgear. Now, what other headgear is there apart from a baseball cap, trilbies, or I've got a fedora I could possibly wear? Are we looking at a hard hat, a wizard's hat, a dunce's cap, or I don't know what other hats there are. Maybe some like those fancy women's hats that they have at Ascot. I could wear those hats, but I think I might start getting some odd looks, or a crown perhaps. That would be good. Every time I mention the word crown, it reminds me of a pub nearby called The Crown, and I fancy a beer. So we could do, but it might not work out. Anyway. Right, we'll do 2 more questions, then everything will carry over to part 3. Otherwise it just takes too long to upload the thing. And this will probably be uploaded in 720p rather than 1080p, just because the length of the thing. But hopefully you don't notice too much of a difference. Right, Jamesy1. Thank you very much, sir. 2 questions from him, and they seem to be quite quick to answer. Well, the second one doesn't, actually, now looking at it. But number 1, what is your favourite type of chocolate? Well, I'm not a huge chocolate fan, but I do like white chocolate better than dark chocolate. I'm going to contradict myself in a minute now. Yeah, white chocolate buttons are probably my favourite. And you can't get them anymore, but I did really love I don't think you can get them anymore. The dark chocolate Mars bars they were doing. I absolutely loved those. They was extremely rich and probably not good for you, but I did like them. So favourite chocolate is white chocolate. Not a big fan of the Toblerone. Or those dark chocolate bars, those Mars bars, hopefully they bring back. Last question for this part 2. Do you believe in an afterlife? Oh God, that's nice and quick. Now that question could pose a video that goes on for hours and hours and hours, but I'm running out of time on the section, so I'll have to keep it brief without giving too many reasons why. Despite all the physics, all the logic that say there can't possibly be, I do believe that there is some kind of afterlife. Yes, I know, it's crazy. I do believe in God. I don't believe in the Bible word for word. There's lots of fights between religions, but what they do have in common is they all have a God behind them, and people have just interpreted religion differently and all in massive fights. Where if we look at what's the same, they've all normally got a God involved. We're just looking at it differently. Let's all get on. Let's all have a big laugh. So I do believe in the afterlife. Yes, it's going to be a bit of a surprise if it doesn't happen now, but I think I'll get over it, but yes. So thank you very much everyone that's posed questions. I shouldn't ask for any more. Hopefully there's no more, but if there is one I might pick up the occasional one, but can't guarantee it because these are already in the process of being filmed. So that was Q&A part 2. For part 3, which will probably go up tomorrow, take good care of yourself and a very fond goodbye.
Goodbye.